Hey everybody, welcome to Dirty Rectangles Online. We had an intro planned, but we decided to go with a cat cam instead. This is my kitten Yuffie. She's a baby. I got her 2
Yay.
weeks ago and she is perfect, but she is sleeping right now. She's very tired.
She's absolutely adorable. We've turned this into Dirty Rectangles Cat Edition, at least for a few minutes.
Yep.
Eric, why don't you introduce your cat as well?
This is
My cat is not here because he just barked everywhere. I always forget there's two Erics.
two Erics.
okay. This is Amy.
That's my fault. I didn't clarify.
She's a sweet old girl.
I love
Cool.
old cats.
I got Hazel here. She's sleeping on my acoustic foam.
Aww.
Close up cat cam there.
Amazing.
Very good.
Amazing. I have 2 cats around somewhere. We'll see if they turn up. There we go. Amazing. This isn't all about cats, I think. It could
will
just be
be
all
games.
about cats, if you guys want it to be.
Say hello. Say hello, Yuffie.
Oh my
Aw,
gosh.
She's tired though.
Oh my gosh. Okay,
She
okay.
wants to curl up.
I think it's time to let her curl up. Maybe we should start this thing.
That's a good
Let's
cat.
do it.
Green light for launch. Primary engine ignition on. Beginning liftoff countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shuttle liftoff.
This is a test. This station is conducting a test of the emergency broadcasting system. This is only a test.
All right, everybody. Oh, I still got Kezia pinned to the screen. That's okay. We are back. We have some announcements before we get going with the best of our presenters tonight. Spoilers, if you haven't taken a look at the poster we've been sending around, we have a pretty smoking night tonight for different games and people that are going to be giving talks tonight. I am super excited. So cool game devs as well as super cool kitties. That's what the theme is tonight. Before we get going, though, we have announcements. Announcement the first. Liam, you want to jump in there?
Announcement the first. Active at every Dirty Rectangles event, physical and virtual, is our code of conduct. Please go to dirtyrectangles.com. Get yourself familiar with the code of conduct. If you have any issues, you are feel free to reach out to any of the organizers. You can find us on our Twitters. Otherwise, there is an anonymous report form if you'd prefer to submit through that.
Totally. Yeah. That's an incredibly important thing that we stand behind, and I've talked to a few people about it. That is a living document, so like those are things we want to have continued conversations about. So find us and talk to us, or don't, and we're gonna keep having those conversations anyway because they're super important. The other big announcement, I guess, that we wanted to bring up because we were trying to brainstorm things that are coming up soon is GDC Summer. So GDC has moved to an entirely virtual session this year. And if you want to get involved with that, it's August 4th through 6th, so it's 3 days. Ticket prices, I suppose, are less expensive than a normal GDC. If regular GDC prices are what, like $1,200 or something ridiculous like that.
It's still pretty ridiculous for all online, but
Yeah.
These are they're $400 tickets
Pretty.
for online.
you can
But-
save if you want. You can save your pennies. There's gonna be lots of great alt conferences coming up in the future when we can return back to reality. There's stuff like XOXO and other cool stuff like that to keep your eyes
Yeah. Real talk though, there is also like student passes that are a lot cheaper. They're like $50, and then you get into like a student session. And there is actually, if you go through the list of speakers, there's a lot of really good talks and a lot of really interesting people giving some interesting talks. So it is something to look into as well. And then you also get access to the vault and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So looking at that, make your call. Virtual sessions and conferences are not, going anywhere anytime soon. So maybe it's even worth, dipping your toes into some of them. Maybe it's not GDC, but like just to see what it's like and see if you can help to make them better, because that's how things are going to go for a little bit, I think. Any other announcements from the crew?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. So last month I mentioned the Game Devs of Color Expo. I cannot remember. I should have checked this, whether their call for speakers has ended or not. In any case, check out the Game Devs of Color Expo. Check out their website. They're going completely online, and it's looking fantastic already. And another event I'd like to highlight is the annual roguelike celebration for all things roguelikey, and also just about procedural generation, and sometimes not even related to roguelikes at all. They have an open call for proposals. They're looking for speakers, and they are providing an honorarium for speakers. So maybe submit a talk if you have something related to roguelikes, procedural generation, or something in that area. They've even done interesting demos and odd little things in previous years to sort of mix it up. They've even had speed runs. Some people in the chat might be interested in that. And it's a cool event that I've never been able to take part in. And now it's online, so I submitted 3 things to it. So hopefully I'll be in there,
cool.
but you should check it out, whether you're speaking or not. I believe it's in October, but don't quote me on that. Just search for Roguelike Celebration, you'll find it and find all the info.
We'll put a link somewhere or something if we remember to.
I will find it after I finish talking.
Was there any other announcements for anyone else? I think that was it for, unless anything comes to mind for anybody. If you're in the chat, we started all these with a big list of announcements. If you happen to have something that you are working on, maybe your studio's hiring, or you just, I don't know, heard about this cool thing, highly recommend tossing that out at the beginning of the show, or anytime really, but like this is where we're chatting about those things. So it's a good time to get people looking at that stuff. So I think with that, we're going to scoot along to our presentations tonight. So I think we have, let's do the old count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 presentations tonight, all equally amazing, and it's going to be real good. So we're going to take a quick little second here, grab a drink of water, grab a fan, all that good stuff, and we'll be back with our very first presenter of the night in just a minute. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here with our very first presenter of the night, Mr. Tyson Mole. What's going on, Tyson?
Hey, I'm excited to show off my project tonight. Basically, we are going to be turning your digital photos into procedurally generated game levels, and I'm going to sort of demonstrate the process through that and why I wrote a whole thesis about it. So I happen to have been invited to a cottage for this week, so I thought that'd be a great sort of opportunity to demonstrate how we can turn, I guess, this little scene back here into what is effectively a game level. And yeah, my application GaiaGate acts as both a camera as well as the game generator and lets you go around, take your photos wherever you are, and it'll capture a little bit of extra data that allows you to incorporate it into whatever game projects you are developing. Yeah, so I am just going to switch to my book. Sorry. Okay, here we go. So basically, this is the main menu. It's just like a temp sort of thing, and it lets you sort of flip through and select between, I guess, scenes that you've already generated into levels. You have the option to check information about it if you wish. I'll go through it again in my Unity browser just to demonstrate the actual nitty-gritty of it. But for now, I'm just going to demo the application itself. So yeah, camera button, and now, hello. So right now it is tracking the GPS location, which is super important for what I'm going to be talking about. It also has information about the weather condition, the anthro and biome that you're in. For example, we are in a temperate deciduous biome here. And yeah, so I'm just going to capture a photo. There we go. A little, I guess my shoulder, whatever. It also comes with a feature to import existing photos. So you can just like click here and then it'll open up a little browser that lets you go through files or whatever. So if you have a photo you took with your phone like 6 years ago, as long as it has the GPS location, you can get quite a bit of mileage out of that. Yeah, anyways, here's a little picture of my desk in Toronto. And I can flip through it and go to the photo of my shoulder, or actually this is a better picture of what's outside. Let's just go with that. And all I have to do is hit this generate button and it'll just come up with a little pop-up saying, there you go. We are ready to play it. So now I can flip through to my phone and there we go. And I just hit this go button and it creates a world based on the specifications of the area. Yeah, that's the gist of it. So I can go around whatever. It's just super basic gameplay. There's a bunch of little fuel things you can blow up, rocks and stuff. Check out the trees. Little radar at the corner to help you navigate. But yeah, this is essentially just like a framework for any sort of game. The goal with this project is to extend it a little further as a game for itself, but also open up a developer kit so that people can take this sort of information, what I like to call external contextual metadata, and incorporate it into their own projects, whether it be games or other sorts of media, effectively turning your existing digital photos into something a bit more telling about the spaces that they are from. So yeah, at this point, I'm going to switch over to my screen. There we go. Yeah, so this is the Unity interface. If you used Unity before, I'm sure you're familiar with it, but I'm just going to go over to the debug controls just to demonstrate basically how it works to a basic level. So basically, once you get all the information collected via API calls, so for example, it'll grab, based on your GPS coordinate, what's the weather like, or where are you, or what time is it, sort of thing. That information is stored in your photo, and then the generator itself will convert that into a number. And if I wanted, for example, a grasslands with a semi-natural anthrome and a thunderstorm. I just put in the numbers here, and I run it, and it should look like that. Oh, whoops! I forgot to put the overrides on. Yeah, but as soon as it warms up, I guess. This will show a random biome, totally random. I guess it doesn't want to. Oh, here we go. There we go. So this is like a totally random instance with rain, I guess. Basically, with the color schemes, I had it replace the colors using palette swap. So it'll take out like a gray palette that represents trees or the ground, whatever, and swap it out with something relatively randomized, but still within a series of complementary colors as well as like color spacing. Yeah. The levels themselves are created from your GPS position. So if I go to the same GPS position within 100 meters, it'll always give me the exact same level. So for example, with this image that's in my computer browser, if I hit go and it generates, it will always show the exact same level. In this case, I believe it's Toronto, so I made a little bit of a urban sort of space with it. At this point, I think I'm gonna check Twitch chat. Let's see. Do I have it up? Disappeared on me.
Yeah, there have been a few
Yeah.
questions. John Axon asks, "Can I make mist with this?"
Mist or myth?
Mist.
Oh, like that outdoor, the point and click
Yeah, point and
adventure.
click.
I guess so. Why not?
And I think you answered this. Mark was just asking to clarify so it's using the location info in the photo, and it's using that to get a map and turning that map into a game level.
Basically, the location is gathered from the photo, the GPS coordinate that is stored within your photo. That photo GPS is used for a few things. One of them being, sorry, hear myself. Okay, so yeah, the GPS position is used for the API calls, but it's also used to procedurally generate the levels so that every time you visit the same area or general position, the way it is generated will always be the same. So the weather conditions might change, the temperature might change, but the actual generation of the project that I'm displaying right now, the layout will always be the exact same. So it gives a sense of, I guess, you're actually grounded in a position that won't change with these photos, and they're unique to that location, and you can share them. So if your friends all go to the local subway, they'll have the same sort of experience, but one might do it in the winter, and another person might do it in the summer. And I think that also opens up for interesting, I guess, gameplay mechanics. For example, with Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons, right? Depending on what season it was, the actual ways to navigate the level would change. So I'm thinking it could make for some very interesting lock and key mechanisms in a procedural gameplay that actually encourage people to go outside and get familiar with their surroundings in a similar fashion to Pokemon Go.
Yeah,
so
that's really cool. We also had another question. What is an anthrome?
An anthrome is it's a play on biome. Biomes are effectively regions of natural area that have a lot of common traits. So, for example, the tundra, the desert, an evergreen tropical forest. These all have very distinctive, I guess, qualities about them in terms of temperature, whether or not there are trees growing, what kind of trees they are, and so on and so forth. So anthrome is a term that was I guess, invented as the human-built equivalent, with anthro as an anthropomorphic. So in a sense, with anthromes, you have densely built populations such as cities and suburbs. You also have villages, croplands, rangelands, semi-natural spaces, and wildlands. So by incorporating both biome and anthrome, you can, I guess, have spaces that tell both about the natural space, but also the human impact on those spaces, which I think are interesting. So, for example, if I wanted to switch to a croplands, I can change my anthrome number to 3, which is the number I've got written down. And if I wanted it to be in the desert, I would change it to 12 for the biome. And let's have it snow in the desert. Why not? So the number for that is 4. And I just have to wait. These numbers correspond to the data sets that I'm referencing. There we go. So now it's snowing in the desert, and it happens to be purple. I think if I hit R, it'll generate some alternate aesthetics. Yeah. Okay, cool. Next question. I'm going to try to pull up Twitch so I don't have to rely on you guys. All right.
So, like, okay, maybe it's time to start getting like slightly more technical in terms of like
Yeah,
what's
sure.
actually happening here. How does this actually go from point A to what I assume is point Z at this point?
Sure. So at the start, basically, you have your camera device. We got to make sure that the camera is enabled, there's an internet connection, and we can access a location. The location can be gathered directly through the phone's API in the case of a mobile device. If it's a computer, the trick is to use the IP address in order to get the location. So I have a particular API that references location by IP address. And now that we have locations as well as a visual feed, we can take that information and particularly the location and send it to reference APIs that know what the weather is in your position. You can also use libraries. I have one called Coordinate Sharp, and that provides celestial information such as whether or not it is, what's the astrological sign right now? Is the sun up or is the moon up or neither are up? Those sort of questions, which is actually especially useful in, say, Arctic regions where you might have the sun up all day long. Anyways, going back, let's see. I actually have a picture. Maybe I'll switch my screen to it. Just a moment. A phone API in the case of a mobile device. If it's a computer, the trick is to use the IP address to get the if you guys can see this, basically we got a little diagram here. So you got your smartphone photo, you got your contextual data, which is what I was talking about with the API calls. This creates what I like to call a multimodal photo, which is basically your photo, but with a lot of cool information in it.
Sorry to jump in, but your Twitch tab is playing the stream right now in the background.
All day long. That's where it's coming from. I'm so sorry, everybody.
It's all good.
Oh, hello.
Very meta.
Let's. I wish I knew how to pop out the chat, but I don't. I'm a Twitch noob. Let's see. Hide this. Thanks, Waxstems. Yeah. So you grab the data, you put in your photo, you have a multimodal photo. This photo can be passed around so long as the website you've uploaded to doesn't interfere with it. So Twitter will be nice to it, but if you upload it to sites that like to compress your photos, like Facebook, they'll actually take away all the metadata to it. So what I did with these photos is actually use steganography to put the data inside of them. The reason I use steganography is if you have a PNG, they don't want to actually like reduce the quality of that PNG. So effectively, you can put as much data like hidden inside of the image itself by changing the red, green, and blue values. And then you can have it red on the other end, and yeah, you'll get all the data without it being ripped out to compress. Yeah, Psychic Parrot, yes, I do get the weather info from a public API. It's open weather, I think. Yeah, so exactly, like Spore. Spore and Monaco both use it. Spore uses it in a very interesting way. They take all the transparency information, and then they can do whatever they want to the RBG values because you can't actually see it, right? So that gives them a huge amount of binary data by using that RBG information. For those not familiar with what I'm talking about, basically, if you know what a hex code is, you know how those like numbers all add up to a color. Imagine using those numbers and converting them into like letters or something like that. That way, you can sneak in a whole bunch of information into an image without actually like if you use the transparency like in Spore, you don't even notice the difference because you can't even see the RBG channels. In my example, I use the alpha channel and just modify it between 100% opacity and 99% opacity. And you can't really even see the difference. So either way, you're sending over an image and you can hide this information in it. And because it's with steganography, the pages that you uploaded don't want to manipulate it, and you end up getting the information on the other end intact instead of scraped away for compression. Okay. I didn't know that Pico 8 used steganography. That's actually super cool. Yeah, is there anything else I can answer? I guess I could talk about the procedural generation ends of things.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah. So basically, let's see. I have a little C# file that actually has all the definitions for how the rooms look. So basically, they kind of just look like. Just to confirm, you guys can see my screen, right? It should look like code.
We can still see your browser right now.
My browser? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me swap that up. I'm going to jump right into the code. Yeah, cool. Okay,
Yep.
So basically, I just have a grid. It can be of any size as long as it's square. And you just swap out these digits. I like to hit the insert key when I'm doing it, just to make things easier. And then you just like press like the number that corresponds to a particular feature. So for example, if you type in 1, that represents vacant space. If you type in 4, you can have a shrub, a tree, hazard, so on and so forth. You can also have particularly like anthem vacant or solid pieces, whatever. And basically what happens is they reference a collection of trees. For example, if you're in a temperate biome, it'll look at the available temperate trees and replace the number 4 with a tree corresponding to that. But yeah, these are just rooms. They actually have to be assembled together, right? So let's see. Do I have a good picture for that? Yeah, I think I have a good one in my browser. I'm just going to switch again. Effectively, what I'm doing as far as actually putting all the pieces together, once I've designed these tiny little rooms, is, there we go. I'm sticking them on top of each other one by one and having them push each other until they are no longer connected. Once that happens, I freeze it into place. And I repeat the process until a certain amount of rooms have been created. So you can take a set, for example, the desert biome here in this image, grab the particular room that you want, or choose them randomly, and then place in the middle. If it's on top of something, it'll just kind of wiggle itself into a different position randomly, and once it's settled in a position, it'll stick. Yeah, and if you have an urban anthem as well, it'll kind of balance half and half between putting down natural spaces as well as urban spaces, and repeat the same process until both have filled up the quota for the amount of rooms that are required for a particular level generation. Just down at the bottom here, I'll share the website later, but we have a few examples of my photos by my friends. One of them is from New Zealand and got represented as a cloudy shrublands biome. Another is a desert in Jaisalmer, which of course was represented by a clear desert. And then I took a picture in British Columbia a while back, and it was represented as a foggy, temperate evergreen biome. Yeah, let's see. So that is what is happening. I'm gonna switch back to Twitch.
This is super cool. So like,
Really cool.
can you talk a little bit about like maybe why you made this? Like, what were the ideas behind it, and like maybe like where you're going with it? Is it? Do you think this is like complete, or yeah, any of that sort of stuff?
Right. So as far as being a game, it's not. Really, I just had the bare bones necessary in order for it to kind of be expressed as a game. What I would like to see in the future, I guess, from a gameplay perspective, is just sort of an evolution of why are we going to these places? What makes them special? What can I encourage? How can I encourage people to actually like play different spaces? One idea I have in my mind is to include a unique power-up, a relatively unique power-up. Like it'll show up in different areas, but maybe it's like a kind of like Borderlands, how there's like minor adjustments to different stats for a particular weapon. I thought that could be interesting. It could be a weapon, it could be a tribute that powers your guy up or something, and then you go into these spaces, you get the required, I guess, fuel to get back, and you try to get the special item in order to kind of come back with a souvenir. And so once you get that item, you can use it and maybe like 4 other items on your next expedition into a different photo. And then you can, of course, like share photos with other people that you might have visited for maybe, to share different, abilities or something like that. That could be fun. Or maybe there's, due to weather conditions, you can't actually, complete a level without a particular item or something like that. So you share it around and, maybe use it as like, hey, can anybody help me, solve this location sort of thing. So I think, I guess, this game in particular, I see a lot of potential for it to be expanded into a light but fun sort of roguelike. But as far as expanding it in general, I think there's like way more opportunities than what I'm doing. I mean, you could go the literal route and do something like Google Earth, where you're literally representing spaces based on their parameters, or you could do it in a more even like glitch studies way. Glitch studies being, when you take electronics and trying to make them work unintended. Well, why not take this data that is unique to a particular moment in time and transmute it into an experience that is, vaguely related to the area, but still conveys, I guess, an artistic perspective and challenges, I guess, a person's interpretation of a location. Faces of the Moon would be super cool. You could, and like, you don't even have to use all the data in it necessarily. You could use just like a fraction of it, or totally forego the image itself. The image I just like because it becomes a little souvenir that you can bring around and share with your friend. And that's great, but you might just want a bunch of data. For example, what's the current zodiac in the sky? Is it Cancer? That's kind of cool. Maybe you get power ups or certain weird things happening to your levels if that happens. So yeah, I think there's a lot of fun opportunities for this. I'm gonna switch to my video just to say hi before. Any more questions?
I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat right now, but this is such a super cool thing. I've never seen something quite like it. Yeah, I don't have any questions, but other than like, wow, that was pretty cool. Anyone else here?
Yeah, no, just that there's it seems to be a lot of creative options that you can take just from this this one sample that we're given.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Cool. All right, Tyson. Well,
Yeah.
Thanks so much for showing us around your, I don't know, procedural, forests or something. I don't know. It was super cool. I don't even know I don't even have the words right now. Cool. So we're going to take a quick hot second here, and we will be back with our next presenter in just a minute. Hang tight.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, and we are back with our next presenter of the night, Ifat Sheikh. How's it going?
Hi.
Very excited for this. I'll let you take it away here.
Slight warning, I am a bit grumpy today, so it just means I'll be slightly more aggressive than usual when I give a talk. Okay, so my name is Ifat, and I'm going to talk to you about how you make Alexa cry, or basically what is the project I'm currently working on, why I hate Alexa skills, and sort of about making games in non-game engine and sort of how this all came to be. So, quick intro. As I said, my name is Ifat Sheikh. It is not my full name, but you cannot say my full name. I'm an assistant professor in York University. I focus on game development. I'm our program, for people who are interested, computational arts. We're an arts and technology program that is a combination of fine art and computer science. Obviously, I'm in the fine art, not the computer science side. I don't know if it's obviously, but pretty much that. Before that, I also was sessional in a few places, including Sheridan and OCAD University. And I make a lot of like weird sort of personal autobiographical work, as well as like weird experimental stuff that doesn't really like, I don't know if my games are particularly fun, but they sort of play around with certain stuff. And I'll get to it specifically. You can follow me on social media. I'm really easy to find because I am, as far as I know, the only person alive with my name. And if you Google me, the most you can find is maybe my dad. I talk a lot about Survivor and about Hummus, if you follow me on social media. So how this all came to be. So I'll talk a bit about this series of games I made, or as this is part of it, that was sort of like, how do I make small games in alternative game engine? And I'll talk about how it came to be. The series is called The Engine is the Message, and what exactly I'm trying to do. So get a little bit academic, not that much, but the Marshall McLuhan was a fairly famous media study person, coined the term "the medium is the message" in his book "Understanding Media." His idea was that the medium itself, and not necessarily just the content, should be the focus of the study. So if we go in the most like specific way, when you tell a story in TV, it's different than if you tell a story in film, and it's different if you tell a story in games. And we can't just focus on the story itself, but we also have to focus on the medium that it uses. And this is really rough, and someone will yell at me that I got it very wrong, but basically that's the idea, that we should focus not just on the content but also of the characteristic of the medium itself. And another inspiration was The Mechanic is the Message, which is made by Brenda Romero. It was a series, I think she finished, I'm not sure, I think there was about 9, which basically she looked at ways to express experiences, specifically in our case, fairly difficult one, through the medium of games. So if you take it, and obviously this is not necessarily everything, but if you take games as something that is more system or mechanics based, whether there's story or anything else, there's still like this thing about the medium that is different than other medium, which is the interaction and stuff like that. And I don't necessarily agree with this, and this is getting to the ludology versus narrative argument academia often have, but she used the mechanics themselves to tell her message of what she's trying to do. The most famous game in that series is Train, which is a game where you basically, that's how it looked like, and it's basically you put people on the train, you don't know where you put them, and in the end you find out you're sending it to like Auschwitz or something like that. So and she has, if you're ever interested in that, she has really interesting GDC talks about it from a few years ago. So this whole started in 2018. Now 2018 was kind of a terrible year, which is kind of funny to say considering 2020, but it was a pretty much terrible year. And but it was, for me personally, kind of a really probably one of my worst years in many time. I was dealing with precocious employment, aging, and sort of feeling like I just don't have the place in the game industry. And I dealt with my anxiety and depression by making a bunch of experimental zine games, all done in non-game engines. And I'll go over them really quickly. There's a link if you ever want to play. But the first one was called the Worksheet Saga, and all it is a game in Excel that is basically based on Conway's Game of Life, which I won't talk about it here because we don't have the time. But basically the whole idea is like you have very simple rule, but it gets you complex results. And if you're interested in stuff like emergent mechanics or emergent gameplay, that's a lot of stuff you use to show it. If you give simple rules, you can get fairly complex results. The second game I made was called What If, and this was a game made in Instagram stories. It was a choose your own adventure game. It was sort of me having an existential crisis, and it ran for about a week. As I said, 2018. And every 12 hours, I published 6 to 7 Instagram stories and a poll which gave the player 2 options on how to continue the game. And based on that choice, I had to continue the story. I also couldn't plan anything in advance. There is documentation. Obviously, the game is not playable anymore, but there is documentation for it. I just made it on using Twine in Itch. So these 2 games are example, but were the first in the series. I also made one that is still in progress, which used Jupyter Notebook, which if you do data science, you know what it is. But the idea is not just to make games that are not done using traditional means, meaning I'm not using Unity or any like traditional engine, but also make games that use those programs in ways that emphasize what they are. So if you're talking about something like Excel, it's about the grid and the complexity of something that is on the surface very simple. It's also not a tool we use as designers. So when player play our game, they might get all like, the fancy, the art and all the stuff. But a lot of our work as designers involves tools like Excel. In Instagram stories, it's about how fleeting it is. Like, and like the story is 24 hours and then it's gone. And it sort of works very well with the idea of like, this is stuff that's never going to happen. It also sort of worked a lot with like sort of the idea of selfie and Instagram influencers, which wasn't as big deal then, but obviously it's a big deal now. And sort of a little bit how women are are punished for showing their face on social media. And that leads to the next game, and this is the main one. And I started thinking about it, I want to say like early 2019. And I was working, as I said, I'm still working on the Jupyter Notebook stuff. But I was like, I just, maybe Alexa will be an interesting thing. I have some friends, I don't know if they joined us, but they did some work with Alexa, and like this whole idea of using voice control to make a game. And obviously, and I'll talk about it, it's the most traditional of of this particular series, it's also going to pretty much be the biggest one. So originally it was supposed to be the next small game in the series, together with a procedure generated story in Jupyter Notebook, which, as I said, I'm working on. It is the most traditional game in the series, as like Amazon has been pushing for more games on their platforms. There are games you can play in like the Amazon Alexa, but it sort of was a still like sort of uncharted territory, and I'll talk about it in a second. And it dealt sort of with my anxiety and sort of social media. And again, it was in a fairly bad time in my life, and how everything seems to aggravate it in social media, and the way people were like, I guess, cruel when talking to you. It like that distance of social media felt cruel, and I was wondering, like, if we talk to Alexa, do we have any problem with being cruel to Alexa? Do we see it as something human, or do we see it just as a machine? So the idea was that the player will act as the machine and the machine will act as the human. So the whole idea is you must be cruel to the machine. And the idea was like, basically, if I put this game in a room and have people interact with, people will be cruel to it, or rather will they see it as human? And I should note, I'm not trying to pass the Turing test. I was really interested in keeping it still very machine-like, so not implementing human exactly. So I'll give you the pitch, or rather how I sent it to funding, and I'll talk about it in a second. So the game I Want to Be Invisible is a game that uses voice control virtual assistant AI device, such as the Amazon Alexa and Google Home, using those devices as the game engine and the primary way of the player to interact with the game. The concept was to create a game in which the controller is the player voice and require the player to communicate with the machine by speaking to it as they would with a human. And the goal was to humanize the machine by making it feel unpleasant emotion. So would you feel guilty if you made Alexa cry? Will the machine feels more real if you experience negative emotion? And specifically, as stuff developed, I was starting to look at the way we interact with female voices versus male voices, or at least voices that are coded more feminine versus voices that are coded more masculine. And part of it came from me, like, I have a academic position. I'm a professor, but if you ever seen me, and some of you know me, I'm 5'2". I have slightly annoying voice. I have an accent, but it isn't helping anything. And so I always get a little bit. There's always a feeling that I get more pushback if I was like, a big dude with a strong radio voice and no thick accents. So I wanted to look at the way people respond differently according to the way to perceive voices. Are we more inclined to be unpleasant to female voices, or do we view them as more nurturing? Alternative, do we perceive male-coded voices as more authoritative? So why am I focusing on voice? And this is from like a lot of articles and a lot of research, not a lot, but some research I've been doing over the years, but the fact that our robots always have female voices. This is a quote: "Patriarchy tells us that women serves while men order, and technology firms see content to play into stereotype, rather than raise the potential jarring result of challenging them." So apparently the series speaks in male voices in some territory. But most personal assistant you can always have female voices. And because we associate help and research and admin not research, administrative work as a female work. And so I was like wondering, even if I'm keeping it very like sterile computer voice, like very sterile in the interaction, does it still, do we still interact differently with different voices? So I was looking at chatbots, and like the first inspiration sort of was Eliza, if anyone knows it. But Eliza is like fairly early computer. I want to say 1960 something, and basically all it was a bot that was like a psychologist bot, but all it did was repeat after you what you said. And people were so and I won't get into it, there's a lot of really interesting reading about it, but people were so, even though this very simple functionality of repeating what you say, people were so believed so much that this was a real person, and people had conversation with this really simple, extremely unsophisticated bot. This is not machine learning or anything else. All it does is it repeats what you're saying. And so it got to the point that the person who made Eliza got really scared of computers and like wrote that all computers had to be destroyed or something like that. It's like a whole thing. And like, and another thing I was looking at was, of course, Zork. If you haven't played it, you should play it. But Zork, the idea of personal language where you just give command to the machine where you go and what you do, and that seemed to be the most like logical way to approach it. And if you played any of the sort of Alexa stuff, you'll see that it's pretty much what happens. So I applied for a minor research grant in the university. It's not a lot of money, but I got it. And what it allowed me to do was to buy a bunch of Alexa and Google Home, which are sitting on my window, and mostly hire a student. Well, I don't know if it came today, but I got someone to hire for the summer with the initial research. So I was all set. I have an idea. It's a little bit like vague, but it's an idea. I have money, a little bit, just to build a tool or to play around with the tool. I know how I'm approaching it. I know the idea of male versus female. I have everything. What's the problem? I have everything planned. What can go wrong? So it turns out pretty much everything. So first of all, there's a little thing called COVID-19. And that kind of screwed up with my plan, because the plan was like, you go in the summer, and we work together. You go in the summer and we work together, hack the Alexa, do something that works, and I can write it off and apply for more funding. The first problem was actually getting the Alexa. It got to the point where the head of like the sort of office manager we had to like run to had to travel, like buy the Google Home and the Alexa and travel to me to bring me the ones it got, and then I had to send it to my student. So the whole thing was really weird and probably cost me more than the actual machines. And another issue, again, this is not the type of work you want to start remotely. Like if it's Unity and I'm doing another project that is mostly Unity based, I can do it remotely. It's not a problem. We can share screen. But the Alexa is a little bit harder because it is voice control. You do need and because I'm not familiar with it as much as other people, and my student isn't familiar with it, it really does need like some sort of physical presence. And another problem, this is a lot of people are dealing with, I'm just not as productive as I was. The second problem, I don't really use Alexa or Google Home. Even now, they're basically like unplugged. If I'm not using them, I aside from like the creepiness factor, I don't know. I never had any interest. So the first thing I had to do was actually play games in the Alexa. And one of the first things you find out that most of the games are fairly simple trivia games. I found a few that were like escape the room games. But that led to the second problem, which is I'm a very visual person. I respond much more to visual feedback than audio feedback, which makes me the worst person to design for voice only stuff. But basically, like, I found that I couldn't keep up with even like the simple commands of like when I was playing an escape the room game. I just found it really difficult. So I was like, I don't really know what to do. And again, I don't really use those devices regularly. I have no experience in what they can do. So I spent a lot of hours just playing around, seeing what they can do, and finding out they can't really do that much, which is a thing I didn't know. The third problem is that Alexa skill is absolutely awful. Some of you might have worked on it, I don't know, but all the existing platforms which allow you to publish to Alexa and Google Home are horrible. Like, absolutely horrendous. I don't know why, but it took me forever to just like, and I know Python and I know like, I learned Unity by myself. I consider myself fairly technical. I follow tutorial and none of it made sense. The way the platform is organized is extremely unintuitive, at least for me. So I did spend a weekend. Basically, I asked my student to find out all the different platforms there is for developing all those tools, see what I can do. And I spent about a weekend sort of game jamming and trying to make something to work. They were all pretty awful, but Dialogflow, it was probably the most like unhorrendous one, and actually allowed to publish to various platforms, as well as like didn't have all the extra stuff that something like the Alexa skills add. Sorry. And the second problem, the fourth problem, and probably the most one, it's a very different experience to design something to a voice control AI design than it is to other types of games. In my mind, I was like, oh, it's just like a Twine game. I know how to do Twine games. But it turns out it doesn't really work that way. A, the limitations are fairly advanced. B, you have to think not just like it's not just thinking about, okay, so they'll click on this and this happens, or this is the two choices you have. You also have to predict what the players will say, because it's not like they're going to just say yes or no. And you can sort of program it that the players can only, like, the Alexa will only reply to yes or no, but then the game isn't fun. So it turns out I know nothing about designing a game which only has sound as the output and input. So I have no idea what I'm doing. So what do I do now? So the first thing I was going to, I still have some funding, and I want to work on the project, and I'll talk about it in a second, but I need to reevaluate my process. And that's what I've been doing the last like 2 weeks or so. So first of all, I got some books, which is I guess the only way academics function. I don't know if it's true, but something like those are the 2 books I got, which is about designing bots and designing voice user interfaces, and I'm reading them now. And they've been actually really helpful in sort of dealing with what worked and like how do I approach it. 2, I'm trying to learn how to work with Dialogflow. I'm following tutorials, and the students is trying to create an app which will choose a random sentence from a book and read it. And this is like just taking literally the stuff I did in Jupyter Notebook and trying to see if we can can put it on the Alexa or the Google Home. So I'm dealing now with actual experience, and this is probably what I'm going to do. Probably in August will be the main thing, where I'm literally designing flowchart, trying to understand how the system works. And the last thing is, I did actually got a little bit of money from the university, which will support me applying for a bigger fund. In not in the winter, in around February. So that's the plan. And if I do get a bigger grant, I can apply. I can hire more students, and probably get a bigger, maybe get myself a lab if we can actually enter universities by February. So that's the plan for the next few years. And this is the end.
Oh, that's cool. Sorry, I'm just unmuting myself here. Here, let's switch views.
Hello.
That was super interesting. Let me switch back here. Here we go.
Okay.
I'm doing AV as I do all this at the same time.
Anyone has questions?
Yeah, if there's any questions, throw them in the chat.
Yeah, I love getting free lectures, so let's start with a quick thank you for that.
I can't hear you.
Oh no, you can't hear me? Can anyone else hear me, hopefully?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Ifat, did we lose you along the way?
I don't think we can hear you.
You might have the channel muted, if that.
Oh, snapping some fingers here. This is us stretching as we fix some AV difficulties. Yeah, that was really, really interesting stuff. I haven't seen too many people playing around with the Alexa thing. I loved hearing about it being a bit of a trash fire when it comes to the API and everything. I don't know if anyone else in the room has ever experienced with any of that stuff.
I can't hear anything. So I'll go over the chat. Let's see. Yes, it does remind you of Nadine CEO of Thesis, because Nadine is a close friend of mine, and she was probably my inspiration to actually look at the Alexa. Hi. So the Jupyter Notebook thing, I should note, like, I've been working on it an occasion. I really love Jupyter Notebook. I have so much good stuff to say about it. So Zork, yeah. And I did get grants. Am I looking to build my? Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. So the question is, are you looking to build your own bot or use some kind of the shelf text-to-speech stuff for input? I have no idea. That is the truth. One of the things I found out, which was a humbling experience, is that I have no idea what I'm doing. Have you noticed better to develop a game for between machines? I find that the Alexa actually is better than the Google Assistant. Like the Google Home, like the API is really bad. Like somehow the Alexa scale, as horrible as it is, the Google Assistant was a little bit better. It was even worse. The reason why we chose Dialogflow is that it literally allows you to publish for various stuff, including like Slack and Discord and stuff like that. Were there any voice game? Yeah, any game that you did find as example. I did like the escape the room stuff, and there was like a Batman detective game that I really enjoyed. I just find them like I really struggle with the voice only. Like I needed a visual input or output of some sort, and I couldn't find it. I wanted speech to text for VR. I used Watson for this stuff in the past, but the service charge per word. Yeah, I mean, I'm less worried about finance. Just because, like, if I do get the funding, this is where the funding will go to, like, to pay for all this weird stuff, including AWS and stuff like that. So it's mostly like either we build our own tool, which would be kind of nuts, or we just like use whatever we can. I've seen some work that was done that was like used you can use it as like they connected. I don't know if it was the Alexa, but something voice control, and they did connect it to Unity, so you could like do a game engine, like you could have a visual input. I am actually not sure I want a visual output for the game. Like I kind of want to like go pure and have only voice, but yeah, that's like it's gonna be an interesting experience for sure. Any other question? Before I old and I go to sleep.
Can you hear my microphone now? Hopefully, by chance. Doesn't
Yeah,
seem like it.
like look, whatever. I'll hire students who can read it better than me, and then like for the open sports speech to text stuff, and like I'm less worried about the technicality, but I find the design itself being a huge issue as well. Anyway, if that's all, I'm going to leave now, I guess.
Thanks, EFAT, even though you can't hear us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was awesome. Let's get some thanks in the chat for EFAT here. We're going to get rolling.
I'm going to disconnect.
EFAT's out of here. It's all good. We're going to get rolling with our next presenter here in just a second. Bear with us. Here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with our next presenter of the night, Jord Farrell. What's going on?
Hey. Yeah. Hello. Glad to be here. Thanks for coming, all the viewers of Twitch. My name is Jord Farrell, as I've been introduced, and a little bit about me is I am a game developer who's made a couple hundred games over the past 10 years, and I make a new piece of art every day and post that. So I'm quite prolific with my art, and I really just hope to keep doing that sort of thing until the day I die. Yeah, that basically sums up who I am. And today I will be showing a game that I've been working on for about 4 years, and I haven't shown it in this kind of public format before. I've shown it to friends and such, but yeah, it's going to be my first time talking about it. And I'm a little nervous because it can be a little bit long-winded, but hopefully you stick with me, and this will be interesting to all parties involved. If you want to switch the stream now, that'd be great. Cool, awesome. Guess, how do I explain what I've been working on? This is a game where a lot of this is a very personal game that doesn't quite come off that way initially. It's once Unity actually plays perfect. One moment. My computer's quite slow. Cool. So what this game is basically you have two sides and you have one goal, which is to attack your opponent and you'll win. And the ways in which you do that is you have moves. You use up to 2 moves per turn. That's it. You can move around. You can attack. And one of the interesting things about this game is moving. You can only move on your colored tiles. So attacking a tile serves both the purpose of attacking your opponent and also creating more territory for you. And there's a lot of little simple concepts like that that sort of enrich this game. And over the past 4 years, making this game has been a process of trying to simplify everything as much as possible. And for me, I have a very specific way of designing games that forces me to try and make things as beautiful as possible. And to me, this game is the most beautiful thing I've ever made, and is also one of the most beautiful games I've ever played. Because, for example, if you've noticed, these two sides have different things going on. That's because this game is about the elements. There's 8 elements, but right now I only have 4. And you can have earth and air right now. And both of them have different ways of interacting with the world and attacking. So for earth, you make these little mountains, and I just, on my little move chooser, chose how to move. And as earth, you can move forward, push your mountains, and that causes an attack. And as you make more mountains and the ways you create formations can create really interesting situations that the other person has to respond to. But on the other side, you have air, and air creates these what I like to call wind currents, where if you just simply move into it, you get taken along and attack every tile along the path. So really simple concepts, but also very, for me, conceptually accurate renditions of the elements they're representing. in the game. And yeah, that is more or less the game without me getting crazily into the specifics. There's a lot of stuff going on that I'm not sure if you've been watching me do. You might be wondering, what is this? What is that? Like, for example, if you noticed, there's these two different, I don't know, cylinder tablet things, and just them being black and white is a very significant thing in the game where, for example, you can only use one white move and one black move per turn. So I used the white move, and on both sides, it's end turn. On this side, I can still use a black move. Yeah, that's just one of a lot of really simple things that are in this game that I could just keep talking on and on and on about for a long time. But I don't know. Does anyone want to chime in and ask me questions? Because I'm not sure how well what I'm talking about is coming across.
Well, the
I
first
think
thing that came through to me was someone mentioned how good the camera movement is.
Oh yeah. I've
If you want to talk a little bit about that, that'd be cool.
the camera movement is pretty simple for, well, okay. So this game, me working on it for 4 years, doesn't look like it's 4 years worth of work, right? So this is actually the fourth time I'm remaking this game. And in the previous versions, I had very different ways in which I was doing the camera, but they all had different issues, which could be anything from like tapping where you want to be is a problem, or the way, because I always had the UI in 3D, the way the UI kind of framed everything was a little off. So I also had making this for mobile in mind, so I had to create a camera system that you could control with just a single tap and would still be quite responsive and intuitive and pretty straightforward. Click a move, these things come up, you click them, you do the move. It seems like it would be the less troublesome way to do things. I might change it, I'm not sure, but I haven't had a problem with it for a little while. I've been testing it on my roommates throughout the quarantine. So that's kind of how I've been going about figuring this out.
can you maybe talk a little bit more about some of these like these mechanics, I suppose, that we're looking at, like this meditate thing, and like is there a difference between the black version and the white version? Because you said you could only use one black and one white.
All right, so let's see what are some cool elements. Yeah, right. So, all right. So another aspect to this game, I don't have a canon word for it, so I'm just going to use the word mana. So there's a mana system in this game, and the way you get mana is both people start off with 0, and for every tile more that you have over the other person, for example, the green side has one more tile than the red side, that gives them 1 mana. So territory control is a way of getting more power, and you can always only have up to a max of 6 or 5. Sorry, which is important, but whatever. I'm not going to get into that. There's a second way of getting mana. So if you meditate, it creates this, white pillar, but as soon as you meditate, it ends your turn. You can't do anything. But at the same time, if I were to move or attack or do anything that isn't meditate, you wouldn't be able to meditate for the rest of the turn. Now, what is mana used for? So, for one thing, move. Let's take move and attack. So, move and attack. Those cost 0 mana, but every time you use a move consecutively, its cost goes up by 1 until you can't use it for a turn. So, for example, move, I used it last turn, so its cost is 1. Attack, I used it last turn, its cost is 1. If I were to use it again, their cost would go up to 2. So the more mana you have, the more you can consecutively use moves before you have to kind of refresh it. And also elemental moves cost, like there's 2 elemental moves for every element that cost 1 and 4 respectively. And the only time the actual move meditate shows up is when an ability costs too much. So you use move a lot and you just don't have the mana to use it. Instead of it just being unusable, it turns into the meditate move. And when you have a meditated tile, it creates this white tile, which has, again, more significance because I also haven't told you there's 3 ways to win the game. And but before I get into that, the meditated tile, it gives you 1 mana. So for every meditated tile you make, you get 1 mana. So, you know, if someone has total board control, you still have ways of getting more power. Do you want me to go into the meditate tile at all? I don't know how much this might be, if I'm going too fast or anything.
No, this is great. Keep going.
Okay, yeah. So meditate tiles, what do they do? Well, if you make 5 of them, you actually kind of win. So that's the second way of winning. And there's a third way of winning, which I haven't shown yet, because of course I haven't gotten to that somehow. But what else do they do? Oh, let's see if I can show it off somehow. All right, so this is fire. Fire makes fire, and what you can do is with fire, if you're connected to any group of fire, you can also attack around them anywhere you want. So fire, pretty, I don't know, pretty strong. They're all strong, I guess. Fuck, what can I do right now that makes explaining this go faster? Wait, can I swear? Is swearing okay?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay, alright, cool. Right, okay, no, I can't show this. Alright, so, just made another fire. So, if I attack this, the enemy that's standing on the meditated tile, it doesn't kill them, right? It destroys their white tile, which now makes them, like, if I were to attack them again, they would be hit. But it's just a way of counter, like giving space for the design to breathe, because it's a one-hit kill game. As soon as you're a little bit caught out, the game would end instantly. And this is a way of allowing someone to have a safety net to either kind of collect themselves or to do a risky play and move forward, because, you know, it's a shield, they are safe. And there's a whole lot of other things that go into it, but now that you see this black tile, I can also tell you what the third way to win is these only show up, you know, when you defend an attack, these corruption tiles, I like to call them. And if you are the person to, like, kind of, like, I block and create a third corruption tile on the board, you lose. So, yeah, so that's that. That's, yeah, I don't know. Any
Cool.
other things you're
There's a couple of interesting questions in the chat here. Maybe while we're chatting about like the meditate thing, there was one question here saying, can meditate tiles be removed by the opposing players?
Can the meditate? No. So, meditate tiles. So, okay. So, earlier I mentioned, you see this red space here. I just chose the move. So, I'm right now trying to select the spaces I can move to, but as you notice, there's the red space I can't move to. What that is the color of tile that's your opposing opponent, you can't move on to it. However, white tiles and black tiles and gray tiles are all neutral. So you can move on to someone else's meditated tile that they've made that's giving them mana, and you can't change it to be yours, but what you can use it for is, as I said before, where if you're standing on it and get attacked, the tile will go corrupted, and like stop giving that person mana, as you could be standing on it and they might have to attack you, or they might not want to attack you, because if they do, it'll go black and the mana that's giving them will go away. But you can't take control of it, no.
Cool. There's another really interesting one here, which is more like design oriented in terms of like when you're building this stuff, which was making these 2-player strategy games can involve both playing a lot against yourself and convincing other partners to be passionate about it as you are. Any techniques for finding opponents or playing against yourself?
Yeah, it's actually a really good question. How to explain this? Yeah, I guess there's a few ways of going about it, and it can be very difficult to, get people to sit down and test a game that, would require them to play it over and over and over again. So that could be taken to be like an issue, like a you're walking into a known problem that someone's going to get sick of this game. But for me, this game, I personally believe, and in my own experience playing it, is one of the most beautiful games I've ever played. And as I bring that out more and more, I don't have any doubt that I will be able to find people who genuinely enjoy and want to play the game. And I think that's sort of the attitude you should have, is if you're making something that you love, you should be totally convinced that it's something that you will be able to share with someone else, and they will also be able to feel the same way as you do. Because, for example, during the quarantine, you could imagine how easy it would be for my roommates to get sick of trying to play this game with me, but rather they've actually started prompting me, even now after 6 months now, to play the game with me and to talk about it with me, and still they're so interested in where these ideas come from.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I think you might be frozen here, but I think the cool thing about this game is that it seems to have that high level of depth, right? When people want to start playing with it. Did we just lose him entirely? I hear there's a giant storm in Toronto right now.
Yeah,
don't
worry.
Did we lose any of the other Toronto organizers?
I'm still here. There's no storm currently.
Okay.
Yeah, that was more so before.
We'll give Jordan a second here. It's a pretty sweet pose, though.
Yeah.
It is a good pose.
Let's take this second to get some Doritos up in the chat here for Jord, which is our call sign if you haven't been here before for applause. This game looks super, super cool. You could tell he's just so passionate about it, right? Talking about it and like working on this for 4 years and everything. Yeah, very, very cool. Cool. Okay. Well, in which case, I think Jord has exploded his way off of the internet, and hopefully he'll be back soon. But we're going to take a quick break and come back with our next presenter of the night. Keep this ball rolling, all that good stuff, and we'll see you in just a minute.
Thanks, Jord.
Thank you.
All right, we are back with our very next presenter of the night, the one and only Alan Pestalozzi. Take it away, Alan.
Hello. Hi, thanks. Very excited to show you some cool stuff tonight. This is going to be kind of developer focused. I'd like to show off the editor that I've been working on. So that's what you can see up above. It's an editor for a game engine that I'm making. And then off to this side is a MIDI controller that I have hooked up to my editor. So that's kind of the gist of what I want to go over. Just a quick overview for those of you who didn't go to the Dirty Rectangles 2 months ago. That's where I kind of introduced this project that I've been working on, which is a vector-based video game engine that renders on an oscilloscope. So you can see here, this is unchanged from the last Dirty Rectangles. It's just a quick little demo game that I put together. So this is rendering on an oscilloscope. So I'm making an editor now for this game engine. I'm using a library called Dear ImGUI. It's an immediate mode GUI system, which means that I can run it on the same thread as my game engine, where my game engine ticks, and then I tick the editor and its entire GUI. And it goes through and draws itself, and then I tick my game engine and tick the GUI, tick the game engine, tick the GUI. And the nice thing about that is it means that I don't need to worry about any multi-threading nonsense. So I am using, as you can see here, this is ImGUI. I'm going to go over a quick overview of how my game engine works, and then I'll get to the MIDI controller and how I've integrated that and what I've learned about that integration. So the engine it's built with the entity component system paradigm. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, but the idea is you have entities, which are basically just links between components. So the components are where all of game state is stored. They do not have any logic or any smarts or any like no functions or methods or whatever you want to call them. They are just data, basically. In the most extreme example of an entity component system, the components will be nothing more than just structs. And then your systems are where all the logic happens. These are all your functions. Each system ticks one after the other. And the great thing about an entity component system, the thing that I love about it, is that you can really, really tightly control the order of execution of everything that's happening in your game because you have that kind of that system order kind of strictly defined. So yeah, this editor, so I'm using Dear ImGUI, which is a C++ library, but there's actually a .NET wrapper for it because my engine is built entirely in .NET using C#. Yeah, so that means that I can do a whole bunch of stuff with reflection, which makes things super, super easy and trivial to do all this cool stuff with an inspector and all that sort of thing. Yeah, so you can see here a list of entities and components. Yeah, each of these entities will have components attached to them. Some of them, the ones in bold here, actually don't have transforms to them. So this is different than Unity, where game objects always have a transform. In my engine, you don't need to have a transform on an entity. Sometimes you have just like a simple, just single component. There might be some other cases of that. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, so that's when you select an object, whether it's a component or an entity, you can see the properties on that. So, for example, scale, position, all this kind of stuff. And this is all just done through reflection, and it becomes pretty easy to use reflection in C# just to populate an inspector where I can see all of these properties for anything that I have selected. Yeah, and I can just go and modify these things by clicking and dragging. And I'll just talk quickly. Just here's the scene graph. A scene graph is exactly as you'd expect. You know, it shows all the different objects in their hierarchy, and I can move them around and parent things if I wanted to. When you select a transform, it'll select it in the entity view. When you select an entity that has a transform or the transform of an entity, it'll select it in the scene graph view. So it's, yeah, it all turned out pretty nice. And Dear ImGUI is really, really, really nice to work with. Okay, so that's the gist of the editor. Property inspector. If you've used Unity, it's pretty similar to that in that sense. Yeah, Yeah. So what when I was working on this this editor, one of the things that I had in my mind, in the back of my mind, was a blog post that William Cheer, who made Manifold Garden, he wrote this blog post about how he used a MIDI controller to control values in the Unity editor and control basically configure the game and be able to adjust different float values using like physical knobs, like you can see on the MIDI controller here. So I wanted to do that. And that also allows me to, so let's say I can assign, let's take maybe the root of the playership. I'm going to assign, and these are actually clickable knobs. So I click one of the knobs, and that puts me into assign mode, and I can assign any of these properties. So I'm going to assign the scale to these 3 knobs. So you can see that they've actually appeared here in my little MIDI controller thing. So now I can go and adjust the scale of this playership using these knobs. I also use this slider here as a scale. So it's like the step size. So every time I turn this knob, when I turn the slider down, that means that my knob is basically doing very precise kind of scaling. I can go on the other axis too. Or if I turn the knob up, then it's much less precise. So little bits of turns will do a lot more. And that's kind of my solution to the fact that MIDI only gives me 127. Well, normally it'll give me 128 different positions as you turn that knob around. But what I'm doing is I'm actually saying every single time I turn the knob, I send a signal back to the MIDI controller saying, hey, go back to center. So I turn the knob, go back to center. I turn the knob, go back to center. And I just record what the delta is. So that way I can turn this knob infinitely and continue to receive, for every little step along that knob, continue to receive the deltas as I turn it. And let's say this was a MIDI controller that had physical, I actually don't know the terminology off the top of my head, but let's say this was kind of like a fixed, a physical knob that you couldn't turn past 0 or you couldn't turn past maximum. In that case, I wouldn't be able to do this, but these are fully digital knobs. And because they're digital, I can send that information back to the knob to reset its position, its MIDI position, and I can do this kind of like infinite scrolling. So that's what I really like about this MIDI controller that I bought. It was like $80. So it's not like a super expensive MIDI controller. Yeah, so I don't know, kind of a cool little way to do that. I can also assign booleans. So right now I have the editor automatically sets up the first 2 buttons. The first one is just a pause, so that just sets time scale to 0. So that's and then the second button is, I'm actually just going to restart the game because you can't really see it because the whole scene moves away from the camera right at the beginning. So the second one is the editor camera. So the editor camera, so I've turned this on, and I'm just using an Xbox controller to control the editor camera. So this is my editor camera. It's a separate camera in the list here. You can see it down at the bottom. It is turned on and off quite easily by just hitting this button that I have mapped to the enabled property of the editor camera. And one of the things that I realized when I was making this MIDI controller window here is, as I'm listing these, well, it'd be actually really nice to have a hotkey kind of, or a button to go to the object that owns this property. So like this one, this is the game time component, which has a paused, and that's what pauses and unpauses the game. I can click on this header, and that takes me to the object that owned the property that is linked on the MIDI controller. I can hop back to the editor camera. So here I am back at the editor camera. And as I was doing this, I kind of realized that, hey, you know what? Like one of the things that I don't have when I'm working in Unity is the ability to quickly move or modify different objects kind of all at the same time in the same window. And what I've accidentally created with this editor just by happenstance was, oh, now this is suddenly kind of like a property inspector that combines properties from lots of different components and objects that are in the game engine. So now suddenly, like, let's assign some more of these. Oh yeah, we had the player ship transform. Oh, that was the position, but we want the scale. Like I can assign a bunch of these things. Maybe this spire here, we want the rotate speed to be mapped. And now I have a whole bunch of these properties that I can kind of access in one window that I've just managed to kind of combine together just by assigning them with my MIDI controller. And now I don't need to go and find them in my scene graph or in my entity and component list. They're all just like right here. Like these are the ones that I care about right now for the editing that I'm doing. And so I can go and adjust those. So that's actually kind of like a thing that I stumbled upon when I'm making this editor that wasn't really to do with the MIDI controller at all, but was more just to do with editor GUI design. Yeah, so that's kind of the, I'm just wondering if there's anything else in this demo that I want to show. Yeah, I can unpause the game and you can see it flying around there as I'm using the editor camera to watch it. And as you can see, it kind of gets away from the editor pretty quick. So I can go back to the game view. Yeah.
We had a quick question in the chat while we're in here.
Thank you. Please do.
So Spinley Q is asking, and I don't know if this is possible or not, but can we hear the sound that is generating from the picture on the oscilloscope as you are twiddling the MIDI knobs, so we can hear what it sounds like?
Yeah, give me 2 seconds and I'll get headphones.
Excellent.
It shouldn't take too long. 1 second.
And this is us stretching for time as Alan figures this out. This was an excellent suggestion. Spinley Q coming out with that great internet content. And while Alan's grabbing this stuff, if you've got any other questions for Alan and his super fancy oscilloscope,
I was going to ask about his super fancy cool chair.
Oh my god, look at that chair.
Look at that chair.
Holy shit.
I don't think you're a game developer unless you got a chair like that.
I've never seen a chair like that before. That's pretty cool.
I think this might be a different oscilloscope from last time too.
Oh.
Oh wow.
There's the fart sound.
Okay. Can you guys kind of hear that?
Yep, definitely.
Okay, it's working.
Yeah, we can hear it.
I got my volume turned differently. Okay, so let's see what it sounds like. What am I gonna know? Okay, we're definitely gonna want to adjust the time scale. That's a good one.
Oh.
I think we can only hear it like when you talk.
Oh yeah, sorry. Let me turn off. I can fix that. Give me a second here.
Oh, you got that audio muting in the background, eh?
There we go. Can you hear it constantly now?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll try to turn you up a little bit.
Oh wow. You've built a synthesizer.
Yeah, you can kind of hear it changing, eh? As I change the.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's something. Something neat. I'm gonna. Okay, I'm gonna go show a different demo real quick here. So I do just have. So there was. I should mention first. I was actually talking with Spindly Q, Jeremy, last night, and I kind of had it in my head that hey, I can make a little demo. Maybe a demo where I just kind of make it specifically to control like a whole bunch of preset knobs. And Jeremy mentioned, yeah, there's a game like that called Panoramical. And I actually played Panoramical at GDC years and years ago, I'm sure of it, and on a MIDI controller. And I totally had that in the back of my mind subconsciously. So yeah, I made something that's not anything as good as that game because I made it in a couple hours today. Let's go for a bigger view. All right, I'm gonna hook up the audio again because hopefully it's not annoying. Okay.
There's nothing annoying about that sound. I think it's beautiful.
All right, so this here, this here is
Oh yeah.
a bunch of different knobs. These are all just properties that are assigned to different, there's like the speed of these discs that are rotating. Yeah, just a whole bunch of random values. I've got this like kind of staticky.
Yeah, this is the content we're here for.
Yes.
So like, I don't know what that is, but yeah, I can kind of just like turn some knobs that do things. What does this one do? Oh, that's my polar coordinates. So I can turn on polar coordinates. Ooh.
Oh.
This one's really need to be very.
This is basically EDM, right? This is what that genre
yeah,
is.
I mean, basically. I mean, as far as I'm aware. Yeah. So I don't know. There's something. I'm gonna turn that one off. What was it? Ooh.
Ooh.
Oh wow.
Hey, Alan, I have a
That's
question
really
if you can hear me.
Yeah.
Have you thought about maybe putting the output of the audio through like guitar pedals or distortion pedals, like some sort of other
Oh.
effect to see what happens visually?
That sounds fun. I mean,
Like, what does reverb look like?
right? Yeah, that
Data moshing.
So what I have done is I have sung into it, like spoken into it, and like I can talk for a while on that, but I'm not going to right now because it gets really technical. But yeah, you can do some interesting things. I do like this.
This is great.
I hope you can hear that because yeah.
I want my keyboard to light up like this when I press a key.
Right.
And make this noise.
Yeah.
So like, what's this one? Oop-a-doo. I'm forgetting what I had assigned to these ones. What do we got here? Oh, interesting. Oh, I thought I hooked up a bunch of stuff, but apparently I didn't. Anyway, that's fine. Did I? Yeah, whatever. This is cool, some cool stuff.
Yeah, it's
The
beautiful.
rest of that was just boring anyway. Yeah, so woo. Yeah, there's the thing. Yeah.
Oh wow, I love it.
Thanks, Alan.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, wait.
Yeah,
There
no
was. I think there was some questions in the chat here.
Yeah,
So Tony Kukulutsi asks, Alan, are you using NVIDIA audio filtering? Ha ha ha. Oh wait, that was when your
Right.
thing wasn't working before. So never mind. That's not a great question. But you probably are, right? Are you using that thing?
Tony.
It was just the input sensitivity, like the auto input sensitivity on Discord meant that you guys couldn't hear it, even though like locally it was fine.
Yeah. Oh, that was the only question. This is super dope.
No, okay. Yeah.
It
was just some wild.
There was also, how many cameras do you have set up right now?
Oh yeah,
Also from
yeah,
Tony.
yeah. I've got one. That's my webcam doing like it's 1080p. That one's going 1080p. I've got this one at like a lower resolution, so that's 2. And then I've got my other camera here. So that's like my nice camera in front of the oscilloscope there. Going through a capture card. So it's 3 cameras. My computer is doing a lot of work, plus running OBS, recording it, going to Discord, streaming it to Discord, running my game, which actually uses like a quarter of my processor because I've got it multi-threaded, which is pretty cool.
That's interesting. So like running on this oscilloscope is actually not something that like do you need like a beefy computer to do what you're doing or
So you need a beefy computer because I have been super lazy. It's the kind of thing where it's like I could spend an extra, I don't know, 10, 100 hours engineering something, or I could spend $200 on a better processor. And like, this is not going out to anybody else. It's literally just for me and my computers, right? So I can be super sloppy with the code. And I have been. I've written some of the worst entity component system stuff that you can imagine. And it's very, very poor performance. But I can afford it.
Super sloppy production code. Who would do that?
Yeah, that doesn't happen in real life.
That's awesome. All right, any last questions or thought from anyone else in the room here?
I got one more for Alan. You
What's
were
up?
talking last time about how like you could only draw so much. Did you get any more leeway with that?
No, the as I had the engine last time was pretty much the like optimizations on that front aren't optimizations that I'm really gonna get. This is the nature of what I'm working with, and that's kind of what makes it an interesting thing to work with. But yeah, I've got so much time to draw, and that's the amount of time that I have to draw. If I go more than that, if I'm drawing more, then that means the screen's gonna flicker. Yeah.
We got
straight up racing that.
Sorry, we got one last good question here from the chat coming from Sis and Chalk. Alan, how dare you?
You're welcome.
and one more question, just to sneak one in here, coming in from Charles LeBlanc. Is it possible to run this on any sort of emulator, or do you actually need the hardware in order for debugging this or getting that?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
So I am building this. My end goal is to make maybe like installation type pieces or things that I'd be taking to a festival, like alt control or something like that. This would be an alt output, but maybe I can make an alt control game using this as an output. So with that goal in mind, it's kind of like a situation where I'm really only building it for myself. And for myself, it's like I have an oscilloscope right here, and it's really fast and easy to work with. In fact, there's no way that an emulator could really give me any benefit when I have this screen sitting right here. Like it's already really nice to work with. So I don't even want to go down that route. But to answer the actual question, yes, of course, there are actually a number of software oscilloscopes that exist, which take what I believe is just like a voltage stream. Or you could also say that that's just an audio stream, right? So with an audio stream, yeah, it'll just like pump that into the software oscilloscope, and then it will emulate. Okay, I don't know what just happened there, but like my ASIO audio interface is not always the greatest, and it just sometimes dies. I need to figure out why. But yes, software emulators for oscilloscopes do exist, and those can be used. And actually, there's some tutorials that were made for the Oscilloscope Music project by, I think it's Gerald Beam Fenderson. And he, yeah, so that actually is an option.
That's cool. Cool. Any parting words from you, Alan, before we move along here?
No, that's what I got.
Hell yeah. Always a pleasure. Cool. Alan Pesaluki. I'm sure we'll see you in a month or two with some more crazy oscilloscope antics.
You know it. You know it.
All right. We'll be back in just a little bit. We got two more presenters. Let's get some Doritos in the chat for Alan here. And away we go. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with our penultimate presenter of the night. That means second last. It is the one and only Oliver Fay. Take it away, Oliver.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so I'll just be going through this game that I've been making on and off for the past year or so. So this is a browser-based rhythm game that supports VR headsets. So yeah, I guess I'll just start with kind of going over the basic gameplay, and then we can kind of just explore it organically, I guess. So if you guys are familiar with rhythm games, you'll probably be kind of like already familiar with the game mechanics. You have kind of notes falling down from these kind of like rails, and then when it approaches the beat line, then that's where you strike the note. So far I have implemented 3 notes, so like regular notes where you just strike a key, and then there's also slide notes, which is something that's kind of like novel, I guess, with a VR headset controller. So these slide notes, the timing doesn't really matter as long as the mallet is kind of like activating the key. Then these slide notes will just give you full points. And then finally, we have hold notes where you just hold the note down and then release it at the right time. Yeah, so I guess I'll quickly go through a map that kind of covers everything, and then go into VR afterwards to cover that part. So yeah, so right now I'm playing on my keyboard. So I think that's one of the advantages of kind of like developing using web technologies is like the cross compatibility between different platforms. So right now, if I just pick like I think medium has all the maps. So. Yeah, so I think that covers everything pretty much for how the game plays, and I guess yeah, so it's a pretty like simple mechanic, and I guess the like what makes it fun, it depends entirely on the actual beat maps. So like it's hard to talk while playing. So that's about it for the basic gameplay, and I guess I can go in VR right now.
Can I just take a hot second to say how impressive it was to see you just pound that out real quick? I don't know if you hit all those notes or not, but it sure sounded like you did.
Yeah, like if you notice, hang on. But yeah, I guess I was just saying that there's like a score and like combo counter in the left that you can kind of see, and I guess also like the color of the notes when you hit the note also indicates like how accurately you hit it. So like if I just like play this again in VR, so like if you hit it with like a green timing, that's like if you hit it with a good timing, it'll be green. If it's like less good, it's yellow, and then if it's like really inaccurate, it's red. So yeah. Let's go back to the menu and I guess kind of go over like the VR aspect. So I guess one thing is you're able to kind of reposition like how you're holding the mallets. So this could be useful, for example, like if you have like a peripheral that you 3D print or just like strap onto the controller, you can actually have it like have actual physical feedback, whereas like right now without it's just like the haptic vibration. I guess yeah, there's like an ad right here because I guess that's broken.
Hey, you gotta get money. Get money,
yeah,
get
I've gotta pay like the domain name and like server costs in the future. But, yeah. Yeah, I guess so settings. You can kind of like lower and raise the keyboard. So that's also like useful if you get like a peripheral, and then you can just like lower the keyboard to like match a physical surface. So then you can just like play on as if you're playing in real life. Timing offset. So kind of typical with rhythm games, like people have different timings. So something that they may want to tweak. And I guess in particular, it was important because with hit sounds, I guess in Oculus browser, the hit sounds are like noticeably delayed. And at some point, hit sounds was the only kind of feedback that you could get. So, so it was pretty important to include that timing offset there. Yeah, so that's the kind of the VR side of things, I guess. I guess I could just like go through and map to.
Yeah, let's see another one.
Let's play.
Oh, so can you like, are you like swiping across some of these notes? That's cool.
Yeah.
So we have a question. Tyler is asking, how are you generating the beat maps?
Yeah, so beat maps are manually created. Here, I'll just get out of VR for a sec to kind of like talk about that, I guess.
The graceful dismount from VR.
Welcome back to reality.
Oh, I guess I have to kind of like stay in VR, except like in like the desktop view. Otherwise, it's kind of like hard to. Yeah. Okay. But yeah. So for these like default beat maps, initially I actually created like a kind of like automated program that reads MIDI files, and since MIDI files already have everything that you need for like a rhythm game beat map, like the timing information, like what note gets played, it was pretty like straightforward to kind of like attempt at a simple algorithm. And I think I actually had like the script on my GitHub repo, but yeah, something to check out later, I guess. But like the issue with automated beat maps is like they're not really fun. So I ended up having to tweak a lot of them. So that's why I created like this beat map editor, which I've since like published as of like this weekend. So this was written in Pixie.js, and you can tell I'm a front-end dev with the lovely default HTML elements.
It looks great. Don't knock yourself.
Yeah, that works.
I'm also a front-end dev.
But yeah, I guess the basic idea is that like you import an audio file, and then you set like the beat map information, and then you kind of just I guess with the MIDI, it's pretty simple to kind of like just see, oh, this is where like a note hits. And in particular, I chose these like music pieces because they have like a noticeable like melody that's pretty easy to like map out. Yeah. So that's about it for the editor, I guess. Unless if yeah.
Sorry, a couple of other questions for some of the other things here. So Spinley Q is wondering, how do you even like working with WebVR? For maybe some of the people in the chat who have never done WebVR, I don't know, what are some of your initial impressions or things to watch out for or anything like that?
Yeah, so like I mostly come from like a web dev background, so working with WebVR was like pretty straightforward, and I actually kind of like prefer it over like the bit of dabbling I've done with like Unity, for example.
Interesting.
So I can actually like share my code base, I guess, and kind of like go through like the development process if people are interested.
Yeah, sure. We got a few minutes here.
All right, let's see. How do I switch? Man, the resolution of the CV1 is pretty terrible. Okay. So you guys see the Visual Studio Code window?
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is just like a fresh project that I've pulled from my GitHub repo. I guess we can try making like a small change, and I'll kind of like walk through the development process. So from like a fresh repo, you just run an npm install to pull all the dependencies. So I guess that's one aspect that I like about it, is like all the packages of existing like software that's available. So I guess one thing I forgot to mention was like I recently added a feature that lets you import beat maps for the game Osu, if people are OSU exclamation mark, if people are familiar with that. So that was actually pretty simple to do, because all I had to do was basically like find an npm package that parses the Osu maps. So this guy here. And then I forked it just to make sure that like if it disappears, then yeah. But yeah, so you just grab all these packages that you need, and then you don't really have to do that much work yourself. yeah, so I guess that's done. And then we can start a server that'll kind of like build the scripts. So my code base has become kind of like spaghetti with this giant like game controller, and I guess other JavaScript components, and I guess I've set up Webpack to kind of like bundle everything together and just produce like a JavaScript file that I then include in like the HTML file. So if we look at, I can't read because of this terrible resolution, but yeah, somewhere in there, there's a reference to the built JavaScript file, I guess. And what you get is like a website. So I guess I'll just switch quickly to the web browser again. So the web browser is running on local machine. I'll mute this guy. Yeah, so here's your local instance of the built game, and I guess the framework I'm using is called A-Frame, aframe.io for people who are interested, and that's kind of like an entity component layer on top of the 3D graphics engine called 3.js. Yeah, so A-Frame has a pretty basic inspector that lets you kind of like see the scene. So this is kind of what I would use to kind of like tweak like positions of different elements, for example, to kind of like inspect what their values are and then like copy them into code. But yeah.
That's cool. This is actually really. I'm also a front end developer, so I haven't heard of this A-Frame thing before, and that's actually really neat.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess expanding on that, I guess when it comes to WebVR, there's a bunch of kind of like main starting points. So one is like A-Frame, another is Babylon.js, and I guess another one is PlayCanvas. So I guess PlayCanvas is kind of a browser-based thing, which is like the closest to an actual game engine like Unity or Unreal, because they have like the full editor, whereas like A-Frame and like 3JS and Babylon.js don't have like the same kind of like tooling that you'd get with Unity or Unreal.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's the inspector.
Any questions from the crew here? I'm just going over the channel. One question from the chat here from Funyan. How is the performance with A-Frame and 3JS? Like, have you found a bottleneck anywhere in all this, or?
So I guess specifically because I'm kind of like tailoring the game towards Oculus Quest users, like I haven't really like tried like pushing technical limitations or anything. So I guess for like at least for my use case, the engine has like these JavaScript engines are all more than enough for like this kind of like simple game with minimal like heavy graphics.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've used 3JS a few times in a few projects, and it seems to be able to throw most of the things that it can handle most of the things that I throw at it. Right. It's been it's a pretty well built engine.
Yeah.
Cool. I don't see any other questions from the chat here. Anybody else on the chat in the call here have any last minute questions?
Thanks for showing off your tools. I love looking at tools.
Oh, tools are the best. That's something that I would love to instill in the community. If you've made a great tool, please come show us. This is super cool. So I had a question earlier, but I think my mic was muted about when you were playing and you had some of those fast notes. Do you just drag your remote or whatever across some of those notes, or are you like I guess what is the gameplay with the virtual reality remotes?
Yeah, so like I kind of mentioned with like the slide notes, like playing with a normal keyboard, you would just kind of like hit the notes in sequence, right? Whereas with VR, you can just kind of like put the controller down and just like slide it across like in the GIF.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, and I guess some background info, the kind of inspiration I got, or like what kind of like made me want to make the game in the first place was this game called like Tunism that I encountered. So I don't know if you guys can, but yeah, I saw this in like Japan, and then I kind of looked into how I could like play something like this, but there was nothing. So yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, but it has like the kind of the same kind of like sliding mechanic.
Yeah.
And also these vertical notes that that can also be done through VR. So that's where I kind of like got my idea to build it, because at the time there wasn't anything like it. But yeah.
Another question in the chat here while we're talking about Japanese rhythm games, I think. Have you played Wacca? W-A-C-C-A? I'm probably pronouncing that wrong.
No, I haven't. Like pretty much the only rhythm game I've played a lot is like Osu.
Cool. Well, I think you have a suggestion in the chat for something to check out after this.
Right.
Cool. Any closing things from you, Oliver, here?
I guess one thing was like if people were interested, I could like quickly go over kind of like the pushing to production process, because that's also something that I like a lot about like developing with WebVR.
Yeah, sure. We got probably another like 2 minutes or so if you want to throw something up there real quick.
Sure, I'll try and keep it quick. So let's go back to the editor. So is it in the VS Code view right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess let's make like a tiny change. I don't know. I can't read. Okay. Let's change this text.
Very classy. I like it.
Okay. Or yeah, let's just push it without checking it out. Oh, I can't tell. Okay. Okay, so I've committed the change and I'm pushing it to the GitHub repo. That's attached to that set up to connect with Netlify, which is the service that I'm using for kind of like hosting the application. As a side note, Netlify talks about like using like not needing Cloudflare as CDN. on like a blog post or something. What ended up happening when I just used Netlify's CDN was that it hit the limits, and then I ended up switching to Cloudflare.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to host on Netlify, like an application with like heavy like data usage, like music files, then it's probably a good idea to use both Netlify and Cloudflare. But yeah, so we can see Netlify automatically publishes a dev branch, and then if it looks good, yeah, so there's our change, and if I felt like pushing it to production, I just click this button. And
I think you're still showing your VS Code here, not your browser.
oh, okay, let's switch. Right, so you guys can see the Netlify app. So there's our commit, preview. That's our change. And then
Cool.
if I wanted to push it to prod, I just click this button. Yeah.
Cool. Life of a web dev, in a nutshell. That's cool. Oliver, this is super cool. Is this so? Is the game out? Like, can people check it out? Is it live?
Yeah. So if you go to cadenzavr.com, you can play it. Yeah. So VR headset is recommended, but not required. If you want, you can like load OSU files, which is convenient if you're on desktop. So I don't know. Let's pick something. Oh, it's on mute.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Back on that EDM shit.
But yeah.
Cool. That's awesome, Oliver. I think that might be all the time we have, unfortunately. But this is a super cool thing. Everyone, super please head on over to this and try and beat Oliver. Is there like a high score or a leaderboard or anything on here?
No, I haven't set up any kind of like server-side logic yet.
Well, get your.
And I guess I probably can't until I have like my own kind of like beatmap server.
Well, what everyone should do for now is write down their top combo score and just tweet it at Oliver, and you can set up a high score based off of that data later. Cool. All right, Oliver, thank you so much. We're going to be back here in just a couple of minutes with our last presenter of the night. Hang tight. We won't be too long.
All right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have returned with our very last presenter of the night, the one and only Tyler Norman.
Hey
What's up,
guys, thanks for
Tyler?
having me. Hey, I'm doing good. So a few months back, I ended up doing Toe Jam, since they went remote this year, and like I know you guys, especially from the Ottawa crowd, went a few years ago. So I wanted to check it out one year. Um, after hearing good things about it, and then with everything going on, I figured since it was remote, this year would be a good opportunity to check it out. And a while ago, Jonah did a talk on GB Studio, and so since then I've been very curious to like check it out. So I wanted to challenge myself and pick up something new for this jam. So I made a GB Studio game, and I can just show you the editor real quick. Everything's broken down into these scenes. You can name them, and scenes are pretty interesting because they have these budget limits because this can actually run on a Game Boy. So you're limited to 9 actors, 25 frames of animation between all your actors in the scene, and 9 triggers. And so it triggers something like this. I made this wide barrier. This thing here, Jonah actually came by one stream and helped me figure this out because basically had to like do a bunch of code to get all these positions set up. Like it's super interesting to work with like all these restrictions on the Game Boy. Like as you can see, like my color palettes, I'm limited to like basically just different shades of green, and that's it. So it's super cool, very fun to check out. I highly recommend if anyone's looking to try something new during a jam, maybe check out GB Studio. Um, and then yeah, so an actor, for example, is just something you can like interact with. They can have movement speed. Speed 1 just doesn't move, I believe. Or actually, I think you have to add sort of components to get it to move. But basically, you can just have like some on interact, display some text. It's got a lot of sort of like built-in things to really handle just doing a sort of top-down exploration-ish text-based sort of game, or text-heavy. You can even have like a logo and a title screen. So I'm gonna relaunch it just so you can see that in action. It's pretty cool. It's even like animated and all that.
Oh, that's so good.
Yep, and that's all I did with that is I just replaced the assets. I didn't change any of GB Studio's sort of default animations that they did. So GB Studio also has a built-in emulator, so it's just running an emulation of a Game Boy. So I think it's Z is the A button, X is the B button, WSD for movement, and I think you can do arrow keys. Yep. So I basically ended up making this room that was heavily, or I guess the whole house is sort of heavily inspired by my own youth playing. I was sort of born a bit after the Game Boy, I guess, but like Game Boy Color was around my time. So this is very, very clearly heavily inspired by Pokemon Gold and Silver. So I made a game basically about running errands. And I also have these sort of little nods to my own childhood playing games on my Game Boy Color. So pretty much the premise of the game is just sort of interacting, starting with this note on the kitchen table saying that the neighbor called before I left. Could you please run over and bring them the extra milk? It's in the fridge. And the fun thing with being able to run this on the Game Boy is I can have very bizarre current era sort of things like a Nintendo Switch. So I sort of found some appeal in having some sort of weird, just like time differential aspect to it.
That's awesome. That's a good sprite drawing of a Switch.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no, it's like again, like you're super limited with what you can do. So like the fridge, for example, is an actor, so you can interact with it, and there's showing you in GB Studio, you can see there's like on interact. I set it so that way if you haven't read the note yet, you can have these global variables. So I named one called like read note, and you're very limited in with how many variables you can have. Like global variables is pretty generous. I think it goes up to like Might be 256, I'm guessing. Oh no, it keeps going. Okay, so it's pretty generous. And then I believe local variables are local to the scene. So I have a bunch of these sort of global variables. Is sort of how I built out this game. So if you check the fridge before you've read the note, you don't get anything. So now we have the milk, and I believe it enters the menu. So you have this checklist of errands, basically visiting the 6 houses. So we can go, the first one is the neighbor next door. And these even have little sort of address markers. And GB Studio has this really good sort of built-in dialog box, which you can customize, which I did. I just did my own typeface for it. So we can deliver the milk. And so now we have our next delivery, which is on the next street. So then you can see here, it's checked off once you've made the delivery. And if you interact with a house before you're supposed to make that delivery, you'll sort of, some of them might give you a clue, or just give you some random dialogue. And I can show you the scene transition that I did. So it preserves, the way I set up the variables with that is setting up this whole, basically preserving the player's Y position when they enter, and you basically have to do this really long sequence of if statements to sort of determine which Y location to place them at on the next scene. So it's a lot of really sort of tricky problems to work with based on the limitations.
We have a question in chat about limitations. Speaking about that, if we could just sort of do some questions from the chat here.
Yep.
Tony Kukuluzzi, the one and only, is asking, and this is interesting because I was thinking about this when you started this. Are the input graphics all grayscale and then automatically converted, or do you have to import them using a file palette limitations? How does all of that work? And I know, like, I remember I've done some GB stuff back in the day, and when I was looking into GB, looking into the actual hardware, it itself actually only outputted grayscale, but then like the actual plastic on the screen had a certain pigment to it, and then that's what made everything look green apparently, which is just kind of like an interesting, the more you know. But I think the question here for Tony is basically more around like, how does the actual graphic, how do the graphics work? How do you actually draw the stuff? How do you import things? How does it work?
So the way they set it up is sort of fairly straightforward. It's basically, you can just import any PNG. However, if it's not eligible in terms of they provide you in their documentation, which is like really fantastic. They sort of provide you with like the exact 3 or 4 colors on the palette that you can use. So if your PNG sort of exceeds that or exceeds any of the other limitations, it just won't show up in your sprites dropdown or in any of your other sort of art assets. So basically it's just like a handy way to sort of debug if you've met the criteria or not. Like there's sort of certain criteria with these large sort of background spaces. I believe you can only have, there's like a very specific amount of tiles that you can have. Because this is all sort of, if you look closely at my cursor, you can see a little gray box that's sort of like each tile. And that's why I just have like these trees are all the same, so that way that all just each take up like 1, 2, 3, 4. They each take up like 8 tiles. But then when you get towards sort of more abstract shapes like these houses, like here I was getting concerned with my sort of tile budget. But I actually managed to stay under budget on all of these, which was nice. So again, it's something you sort of have to consider while doing this.
That's interesting. Is that in the so you had like the animations? It was AF something. Those things for each frame, which is basically like your resources, right? So that's sort of what you're talking about with like the palette. Yeah, those things.
Yep. So these purple squares are actors. Yeah. So I have 6 actors out of my 9 total for the budget.
Got it. Cool.
I think the player by default counts as 1. Because I think the budget, I can't remember if the player counts as the 9 or as like a 10th.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This is cool. I'm soaking all this in. I've been wanting to mess around with this tool for a very long time, and like it from what I understand, this builds to actual Game Boy ROMs, right? Like you could just run this on a Game Boy.
Yeah, I believe I can't remember if Jonah brought their game on a cartridge once to Rectangles, but
Oh yeah,
you
yeah,
could
yeah,
find
yeah.
it. Yeah, I remember there was a tweet he made about it.
That's awesome. So this was just so maybe let's pull back a little bit because I'm curious about how Toe Jam went for you entirely remotely. What was that experience like?
That's pretty good. I mean, I just ended up doing it solo just because that's sort of what I'm used to.
Right.
But like they've got their own sort of community run on Discord that was really cool. It was just hard for me to stay active just because between learning something new and just trying to get everything done, I was sort of kept my head down and just focused on my own stuff. But it was definitely really chill.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'd love to actually go to one in person at some point some year, so who knows?
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
maybe
maybe I don't know about next year, but maybe the year after that.
Yeah.
Let's.
Yeah, maybe.
Whenever it does happen, it's definitely the best energy at any jam I've ever been to.
Fuck yeah, yeah! It is a thing to see, and like the energy there is like Liam was saying there, like it's you feel it, right? Like you're just amongst all these people that want to get this cool shit done, and it pushes you in a really cool way. I hope digital jams can like steal some of that essence in some way, right? And I know like Ludum's been doing this for years and years and years, so maybe there's some lessons to gain from that. But yeah, very cool.
Yep. Yeah, and that's like the impression I got from their Discord was like, yeah, the community, like again, was just like really, really cool to be around.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is up on itch.io if anyone wants to play it. Oh yeah, and I'll also drop a link in chat. Jonah did I think it was like a few months ago, a really good talk on GB Studio. It's about an hour, just under an hour long. So if anyone wants to get a more sort of in-depth look at GB Studio and some of the more fancier tricks you can do with it, I highly, highly recommend checking it out.
Hell yeah.
Is this the Game Dev World talk?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good talk. You should check it out.
Oh yeah,
that's
that's definitely what
we'll
sort of
put
helped
it.
me out.
We'll put it in our notes or something like that as well too. Yeah, GBC's this is such a cool little tool, and like, man, I want one of these tools for every old ass console that's out there, right? Like, I want this for Amiga, and I want this for I don't like everything. They should have like somebody should be working on these tools, or at least like one go-to tool that I could then export to any of these old ROMs and old emulators and stuff like that. That's just such a cool thing.
Yeah, and I can't remember if they've said that they're planning on sort of expanding this to include sort of Game Boy Color limitations, because that would be cool to work with.
Yeah, makes sense, right? Like it's the next step.
Yeah,
that's super cool. In the chat here, 3DO overlooked again. I don't know about that. I think it's been overlooked just enough. Cool. Tyler, thank you so much. Is there any closing things you want to leave us with here?
Not too much that I think of. I mean, if you want to check out what I'm up to, which is not a whole lot these days, but I'm on Twitter at TyNorman, Ty Norman. And after the show, I'll tweet out a link to it if you want to play it on itch.io, and I'll also probably tweet out a link about Jonah's Game Dev World Talk as well.
Very cool.
So you should check those out.
Cool. Well, we're gonna slowly slide into our transition of the end of the night here. If the other Rectangles organizers want to turn on their cameras, this is the end show. Oh, we're doing it. Is there any cats still left here?
No, they're gone.
Not currently.
It's too hot for the cats.
Oh, it's boiling in here, but
Tyler, do you have any cats over there?
None. Either of them are in my room right now.
He's very hyper right now. But...
Yeah.
It happens. Cool. So this is episode number 3 of Dirty Rectangles Online. Whoop, 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 whoop. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. Few closing thoughts as Yuffie is playing on the floor there. If you want to get on this show, reach out to us. Also, we're going to be proactive in reaching out to people as well too. But you can find us on Twitter, so twitter.com/dirtyrectangles, as well as twitter.com/rectangles_TO for our Toronto counterparts. Feel free to reach out to any of those, as well as any of us individually, and we could go from there. We have a special Discord that we use mainly just for these nights, but we could get you on there and you can show your games off and all that good stuff. We got all the orgs here. Justin, how's it going? Eric, other Eric, Kezia, Liam, all the cats, and all the other organizers who couldn't make it tonight but will be here soon. Thanks everybody. Any? Oh my God! Look at that cat! Look at that cat! What a cute cat!
The recording of this episode is going to be going up on YouTube. Yeah.
Hell yeah! Sure. Yeah. So all the links. So we've updated our Twitch channel with links to things, if you know, as proper Twitch channels are to do. So you can find all of our Twitters there, as well as our YouTube channel where we're backing everything up. So this will be up there tomorrow-ish or something like that. And that's about it. Keep it real. Keep it curling. Keep it kitty. We also have Justin here today for the first time organizer. Justin, hi.
I was here last time. I was just like watching. I didn't have a camera.
Oh well.
Lurking.
He's here for real this time. Cool. Okay, that's it. I think we're gonna sign off and go do all that good stuff. We have one more video to leave you with. It's a good one, and we will see y'all next month. Bye.
Thanks, folks.